Hi folks, it's Andy and welcome to today's Kendo rant. I know it's been a few days since I last put one of these up. I'm very sorry about that. And today is a bit of a short one as well, I'm afraid, as I'm a little bit strapped for time. But let's get straight into the questions and get through them as quick as we can. So, I'm a beginner and I would soon buy my first Bogu. I saw the white version in your online shop and I really like the look, but I'm a bit concerned that it could be considered inappropriate or too flashy. I also read that the colour is sometimes reserved for women. I'd be thankful if you could elaborate on the colour's use and meaning. And actually there's another question really similar to this, so I'm going to read that out now and I'll address them both at the same time. This is another question very much related that was in the Kendo Show Early Access group, which there's a link to down below. It's a great group if you're not in it, so get in that group too. This question says, "Hi Andy, I was always wondering why do people wear white Bogu? It seems more difficult to maintain and just looks a little weird to me. I've noticed a lot of retailers don't sell it, so it's obviously a very particular style people have to specially order. I look forward to your thoughts." Okay, so white Bogu. Why does it exist? It exists for a kind of, it's really more of a kind of stylistic thing. It's more of a, it tends to be mainly women that do wear it, as was mentioned in one of the questions there. It doesn't have like, I mean, there's lots of things that have been said that I've heard. I've never heard like an official explanation for it anywhere. I feel like along the line somewhere, probably some, Bogu retailers came up with it as a kind of something that's a little bit different. But obviously white is very much associated with purity. And that's why, for example, the Imperial Guard, they wear the white Kendogi and Hakama, not the Bogu, but the Dogi and Hakama. And often women wear or girls as well, young girls often wear the white Kendogi and Hakama, especially as it's easier to wash as well. So there's that. Often you'll see a white Bogu set with a red door, and that's got connotations as well that are a little bit sort of echoing back to the Japanese flag. Obviously that's white with the red circle in the middle. But yeah, I mean, there's no sort of like specific rule or reason on it particularly. But yeah, I wouldn't be looking at getting a set if you're not a woman. It's a bit unusual for a man to wear it. It's unusual actually for women to wear it. Most women wear blue Bogu, but some women do wear the white one. Often, it wouldn't surprise me actually if it came about, excuse me, it wouldn't surprise me if it originally came about from like a high school team or a university team that decided to make something a bit different, because that sort of quite flashy type appearance is often quite popular amongst those sort of things. So one might, wouldn't surprise me if several years ago, many years ago, decades ago probably, a particular university team or high school team decided that they were going to stand out and be quite intimidating to their opponents by having full white Bogu. And there are a couple of high schools and universities that use white Bogu for their tournaments. So I expect that's where it came about. In terms of keeping it clean, yeah, I mean, obviously the blue indigo rubs off from other people's Bogu as well, so it can be a bit harder to keep clean. And it can as well, after a long time, it tends to go yellow, obviously as you're sweating into it and stuff. And yeah, not many retailers stock it because there isn't a high demand for it, and it's very difficult to make because obviously when a workshop is making Kendo Bogu using indigo dyed Aizomi fabric that really rubs off onto everything it touches, when that workshop then wants to make a set of white Bogu, everything has to be stripped and cleaned, and everything has to start from scratch. Nothing that's touched the indigo Bogu can touch the white Bogu, which is very, very difficult in that environment. So what you tend to end up with a white Bogu set is a much more expensive set considering its specification. You are going to have to pay a sort of premium really for the fact that it's white, mainly because of the actual difficulty that's involved in making it. Okay, so I hope that sort of makes sense. Let's move on. Is it permissible? This is actually a comment from an older video. I think it's on the video I did about Ashisabaki. It's not on a Kendo rant video. So I hope whoever posted this does see this video. It says, "Is it permissible to turn the left foot to the left? Otherwise, there's simply no stability and I'm falling. And how permissible is it to bend the left leg? For you, I saw a slight bend on the right foot, although this is a mistake despite the fact, or am I wrong? Despite the fact that the Hakama makes it difficult to see, or am I wrong? Already exhausted due to discrepancies. Okay, I'm not discrepancies in various sources. Yeah, I mean, you'll always get discrepancies in various sources, and I've always been very clear about what I show on the Kendo show is from my experience, what I've been taught, and what I think is correct. It's not permissible to turn the left foot to left like this. It's not permissible to do that. You'll get blisters on your feet if you do that, and you won't be able to launch yourself properly. If you don't have stability, then you need to widen your stance slightly, so it's about shoulder width apart, and you need to make sure that your big toe is about level with the back of your right heel. You don't need to really bend your left leg. It's slightly bent, but it's not locked straight, but it's also not hard bent either. It needs to be pushing slightly down and away from you, so that you've got your leg, I mean, in its entirety, so that you've got the power to push forward using your left leg. So yeah, that's your knees. They're kind of very, very slightly bent, but yeah, definitely don't want to be turning your left foot out to the left. That's going to send you, it's going to, like I say, it's going to give you blisters. You're not going to launch properly, and when you do, you're going to launch in the wrong direction. You're not going to launch straight, and that's really, really important. I know it's difficult in the beginning, especially if you're just starting out in Kendo, and what many people do when they're starting out and they find that it's difficult, they try to look for alternative ways. That isn't how you can get around this, I'm afraid. You can't take a shortcut. You can't say, I want to do it a different way. You have to do it the way that it's taught, because that's the correct way that's been passed down through generations. We know that it's the right way and the best way to do it. So it's best to just follow the teachings and get on with trying to get used to how to do it, to be honest. Next one. Hello, Andy. Can you explain a little in depth how is the high-level police Kendoka life throughout their career? They just stay the entire life just practicing Kendo until they retire as policemen. Another question is, after they get older, they have progress until they achieve the 8th Dan, so they can move on to the 8th Dan All Japan Championships. Or do they just keep practicing Kendo as a job, normally until the time comes? I mean, I'm comparing to a normal career life cycle. But not sure for them it works the same. Okay, so it depends how high level we're talking, all right? If we're talking about the best of the best guys, the guys that are in the All Japan Championships and the 8th Dan Championships, like you say, then generally their sort of path towards becoming that level of competitor or Kendoka starts at a very, very young age, probably even as early as elementary school. If they've sort of got a talent in Kendo and they're also very committed to it, they obviously have the successful tournament record even at that age. By the time they're sort of a 5th or 6th year, then they'd be probably looking to go on, sort of pursue a career in Kendo even at that age, which I know is very early to be thinking about that sort of thing. And they'll often end up going to a junior high school that's specifically, they'll choose that based on the Kendo club at the school, and then they'll potentially be offered, assuming that their Shiai record, their competition record continues to improve, they'll often be offered like a scholarship at an expensive private school that's very strong at Kendo for the high school. Same happens for university. And then if they're still performing very, very well, then they're often scouted for various police forces. Usually these are the biggest forces in the country, because they're the ones that have got the resources and ability to offer an attractive job prospect. So like the Tokyo Metropolitan Police, the Osaka Prefectural Police. That's why these have very strong teams, for example. And then obviously others as well. Kanagawa has a very strong one. Hokkaido does as well, and then so does Kumamoto. Obviously, recently has had a good deal of success. Has Fukuoka, and Saitama in the past has as well. So then they get sort of scouted into that, and then when they're into that, they usually get. It depends then on what. Each police force obviously operates differently. I'm not a super expert on this, by the way. This is all I know from what I've sort of picked up whilst living over there and knowing several members of the members of it. But obviously they do have certainly in the bigger ones, they'll tend to join like a a specialist police Kendo team, and often they're associated with the riot squad, the riot police. But generally their day in day out sort of activities are practicing Kendo. They don't tend to do any like the other sort of stuff. In the bigger places, in smaller places, not the same. In smaller places, they have to do police work as well. But in certainly the big places, they don't. They just do the training. And even the days when they're not training, they're doing the working out, like the gym and stuff like that. And they'll continue to do that, and hopefully they'll continue to have a successful competition career. If they don't, then they'll end up losing their position in that team, and then they'll become a regular police officer, and they'll be expected to do regular police work. But on the condition that they continue to do very well, like some of the very top level players have done, and place in the All Japan Championships, stuff like that, then they'll obviously coming with that will come with rising up the ranks. Perhaps they'll come to an age where they're no longer really looking at being competitive, but they still have, usually when they get in their sort of late 30s, sort of coming up to 40, there are a few exceptions of course, they tend to kind of start to step back from the competition as regularly, because obviously there's young guys coming up as well, and then they'll often, if they're very successful, very famous players, then a job will be found for them that's still very much connected to the police Kendo team unit, as it were. Often sometimes they also have to get involved with other like martial arts activities within the police. So there's a Taiho Jutsu, which is like the art of arresting. Many of the Kendo specialists become instructors of that, for example. But even then, it only sort of occupies a small percentage of their actual job role. And then if they still continue to be very successful in the tournaments that they do enter, then of course they have the prospect of being selected to join the All Japan 8th Dan Championships. And then they tend to then get more and more involved in other aspects of the Kendo world. Certainly within Japan, things like getting involved with the Kendo Federation, start doing a lot of shimpan, stuff like that, and doing a lot of sort of teaching, gradings, and that sort of thing. So that's the sort of path that they tend to go along, as it were. And obviously they keep doing that. They get past their 8th dan, they start racking up the shogo, and then once they get to sort of that level, then obviously they often get awarded their level of hanshi as well. And that's obviously where they kind of sit out the rest of their life, really. A lot of those things tend to happen after they've retired from work, though. So they do lots of the shimpan and lots of the grading and stuff after they've actually officially retired. But obviously, it depends. A lot of it is a individual case as well. It could be different. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Again, that's just my experience. Hey Andy, any plans to do KendoStar gift certificates? Possibly. I'm sort of. It's on my list of things to do, is to look into the possibility of adding that as a feature to our website. Is it something you'd like to see? If you'd like to see KendoStar gift certificates available, then leave me a comment down below and let me know, and I'll certainly bump it up the priority list. How do you utilise the massive bamboo from old shinais? Tomato plants, grapevine trellis. I'm not much of a gardener. I certainly don't have green fingers, so that isn't something that I do. I did give a load of broken shinai staves, not the broken ones, but like sort of broken ones, the ones I couldn't use anymore. I did give a load of those to my dad once, and he did something like that. But but I certainly don't. I tend to just chuck them in the bin. If I can't make them into another shinai. Next one. I see in Kendo tournaments videos that players sometimes quite long phrase while attacking or after an attack in Japanese. What do they say? Hope this has not already been asked before. Cheers. I think what you're talking about is the voice. So they're shouting. It's called. It's often called kiai, but it's actually. Kiai is actually a slightly different concept to the actual voice. But yes, in Kendo we do shouting. you begin your interaction with what's called kakegoe, which is where you do a kind of loud shout towards your opponent. It helps bring up your spirits. I've actually ranted out about it a little bit before. Brings up your spirits. It sort of lets them know that you're here and you mean business, and it kind of, hopefully it puts them off a little bit of getting too comfortable. And then also it's we have a concept in Kendo called Kikentai no Ichi, which is where when a strike, in order for it to be valid, has to be a unification of your sword and your spirit and your body all together as one. So you have to hit with the sword, the correct target, with the right part of the shinai. You have to hit, you have to move your body has to move together with the sword. It has to be a complete unison between the movements of the sword and the body, and also there has to be an expression of spirit. So your spirit has to be in it, and the most common outward display of this is through a shout, and we usually shout the name of the target that we are attacking. So if we're attacking the man, we shout "man" or "kote do tsuki." But as things progress, things get more and more intense. The actual syllables that come out of our mouth tend to be a little bit more, how can I say, a little bit altered, shall we say, okay? But in principle, the basis is that it's man, kote, do, tsuki, is what we're shouting as we're hitting, okay? That's part of what's required in Kendo for what's called Yuko Datotsu, which is a valid point or a valid strike. So for a strike to be considered valid, it has to have that element. Okay, last one. I have a question regarding Fumikomi, specifically the foot stamp. When I do Fumikomi, the sound is a deep boom, but I think maybe too much heel is involved. A few people in my class who are more experienced instead have a sharp slap sound to their Fumikomi. Is this because they land flatter? Is it better to have a slap rather than a boom? Any tips specifically how to plant the front foot? Cheers. Okay, I get asked this question quite a lot. I get asked quite a lot actually. There's a lot of young Japanese players that you'll see as well, like university level, and they have a very loud bang, but it's a kind of slap sound that you hear. And people are always like, oh, should it be a really loud slap or should it be a bang or what? And my advice to most people is like, the first thing is, don't concentrate too much straight away on the sound it makes. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you're, First off, that's very common is the front part of the foot landing first. That's obviously wrong, okay? But that's not what you're talking about. Yes, you don't want to land on your heel either, otherwise you're going to hurt your heel. Ideally, if anything, the heel could land slightly first, and it kind of is this kind of action, yeah? But not like this, yeah? Not like this, yeah? But kind of like this, but more like this. Yeah, so it's quite hard to explain on a video that I'm shooting on my iPhone, but but yeah, if anything, it is a kind of slap, kind of. But then, you know, there are other people that would say no, it should all be together like this, but I'm not so sure on that. It's more this way, but not this way. Yeah, more like this. Just a split second like this. Okay, but don't focus too much on the sound. First, most importantly, lots of people come to me and say, hey, what sound should it make? How should the sound be? I'm like, okay, show me. And actually, they're not hitting the shinai at the same time as they're making the stamp. So I say, well, first think about doing it together. Yeah, and we'll worry about the sound later. And then, so yeah, that's the biggest thing I would say is the most important thing is that it happens together. And that you're not doing it like, say, bang on your heel like this and not on your toes like this. If you're getting somewhere in between there, then you'll be okay. As long as you're pushing, it's more important that you push from your left leg and you drive forward with your hips, yeah, and your lower back, and you push that into the strike. Okay, that's my sort of stance on that. I know it doesn't super answer your question, but don't read into it too much, I think is the takeaway from it, okay? I hope that makes sense. I'm going to end that today because I do have to shoot. I will do my best to get another video shot tomorrow, so leave me questions down below. Let me know what you'd like me to rant about. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, you know, all that sort of stuff. I don't need to tell you now. Most importantly, shop at KendoStar, because that's what keeps me in business doing this. Keeps the lights on, keeps these videos rolling. It's a really great web shop as well. If I do say so myself, obviously I run it, so I would say that. But everyone that shops there seems to agree with me. So if you haven't tried KendoStar.com, make sure you get over there and do your Kendo shopping there, okay? Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.